All right, hey everybody, welcome. Very excited to see everybody here today, and a particular warm welcome to the new channel members and Diego and XX Leliochenko. What's going on? I appreciate you guys. Appreciate your support very much, and we are live today. This is going to be an interesting one. So, what I've been trying to do. First of all, welcome to everybody who's here. I'm just cleaning up my my honeycomb Bravo because I was doing a jet flight earlier today, and now we have to fly the mighty Cessna 152. Sorry about that. And I was just reviewing the chart here before we get going, and one of the things that I've been trying to do. So first of all, this is IslandSimPilot Academy. Welcome everybody to the class today. This is the 7th class that I've done. We've been doing them for now. This will be the 4th week, and I have been having a very good time. Michael, how are you doing? It's really great to see you. Appreciate. I know it's late for you, so I appreciate you stopping in. But so this is the 7th class. We've been doing this now since for about 4 weeks, and it's kind of developing as we go. And one of the things that I took from a class a couple weeks ago is that people really enjoyed seeing the hey bedbug, what's going on? Oh, that's awesome! You're not going to regret getting Navigraph. Navigraph is fantastic, and thank you also to Navigraph for helping out with this class by letting us use their Jeppesen charts and their app and everything. So, but one of the things that I picked up was that people really enjoyed seeing the approach flown after we talked about it. And so that's what we've been doing the last couple weeks, and it's been going really well, and I've been enjoying it. And what I've been trying to do is build on previous lessons. So we did one on VOR navigation, and then we did a VOR approach, and then a localizer approach. And last week I kind of threw in a little bit of a curveball. On Thursday we did, I believe it was Cork, Ireland, and there was an NDB, a non-directional beacon in the approach, which was a little interesting. And that's awesome that you were able to practice this, Michael. I haven't been able to practice this before we go give it a try, but it's going to be a fun one because this approach has a lot going on. It has a VOR. It starts at a VOR, which is somewhat unusual for an ILS approach. It has an NDB. The missed approach is part of the NDB. And then it also has a very interesting missed approach. And it's also in very mountainous territory. If you take a look here, you can see, so on the approaches that we've done so far, the only I say the only consequence really is potentially hitting the ground, which is of course a severe consequence. But there hasn't been a lot of terrain involved. And when you look at this approach right here, just outside of the the airport environment, really, there's a peak going up to 4,500 feet right over here. Looks like there's a tower maybe on top of a hill, or that I guess that's it looks like a tower on top of a hill that goes up to about 2,200 feet, 2,300 feet, 2,700 feet, and then here on the west side of the airport, 3,120 feet, and then 6,000 down here. So there's a lot of terrain around here to reckon with, and it looks like we're flying down basically into a bowl or into a valley. So there is a lot of hey Brew Pilot, hey Peter, how are you? Good to see you guys. So there's a lot of potential consequences when we're looking at what this approach entails. But again, like I said, there's a VOR DME up here at the top. the ILS localizer, depending on which one you're flying. And then down here, it's a little bit different actually than just an NDB. This is what's called a locator outer marker, and we'll talk about it more when we get to that part of the approach. But this is a locator outer marker, which is an interesting thing that you used to see quite a bit on instrument approaches, on ILS approaches, but you don't really see them that much anymore. And it's got minimum bank angles for turns on the missed approach, because when you go around here, there's terrain out there, and terrain, north of where you're turning. And there are some other very interesting aspects to the approach too, in terms of the minimum safe altitude and the minimum climb gradient required for the missed approach. So there's a lot going on with this approach. But when you get right down to it, it's just an ILS approach, and we'll try to make it as simple as we can. But this is a challenging approach, and it's going to be a hoot to fly, I can tell you that much. So first things first is that you've got your radio frequencies up here. This is what Jeppesen calls the briefing strip. And it's the ILS or localizer runway 15. So you know that you can fly either approach. And let me see if they've got the times. They don't have the times. Okay. I always like a localizer approach with timings that I can use as a backup for my ILS, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So what you'd be doing when you're coming in here to Salzburg to start this approach, this is the frequency you get your weather. I usually get my weather about 25 miles out in the Cherokee or the 150 that I fly in real life. Salzburg radar and approach control, these are the frequencies you would use. Presumably one is when coming from the east, one from the west, and then Salzburg Tower. So these are in order that you would use them. As we talked about before, the asterisk means that they're not always in operation. So you would have to look and see what times these facilities are in operation. And then once we get here to the actual approach itself, so the localizer, this is the left-right guidance that you would tune in your nav radio, and you would tune in 1099, and you'd identify that localizer by the Morse code identifier, which is OES, which you'll see down here in the overhead view. You see the three dots, or the three dashes, the one dot, and the dot, dot, dot. So that's what you'd hear if you tuned in this localizer and then pulled out your volume knob and listened to the localizer frequency. You can actually listen to it and you'll hear, hey, Mike, what's going on? How are you? Great to see you. So that's how you would identify that localizer. Now, the final approach course for the localizer and the ILS approach is 153 degrees. And then the glide slope intercept for the ILS approach is an interesting one. It says here D 8.1 OES and then 4,000 feet. And we'll talk about that a little bit more once we get down into the overhead and the plan view. It's a little different than most ILS approaches. And then the ILS minimums, the decision height, we'll see down once we get down to the minimum sections. Now, this is a little bit higher of an airport. Most of the airports, I think all of the airports that we've used so far have been sea level. This is 1,400 feet. Not tremendously high, but high enough that, that it certainly might make a performance difference in a Cessna 152 that we're going to fly today. But the other thing is, I'm used to flying at sea level basically all the time. Even in my real flying, the airports where I fly to around here, maybe 500 feet, 400 feet, 300 feet. You've got to keep in mind that the airport is at 1,400 feet. And so that's just another little thing to keep in mind. the minimum safe altitude. Now we've talked about these before in previous classes, and they're usually pretty straightforward. This one is really interesting. So so basically north of the field, your minimum safe altitude is 4,000 feet, and what that means is, or I'm sorry, north of the Salzburg VOR. The Salzburg VOR is right here, and it's this VOR DME facility right here. And that's identified 113.8, and that's your Morse code, and that's how you would identify it, again, listening via the radio. Now, north of the Salzburg VOR, your minimum safe altitude is 4,000 feet. And we've talked about this as well, that a minimum safe altitude basically in what the FAA calls non-mountainous terrain, the safety margin that you have with a minimum safe altitude is 1,000 feet of obstacle clearance. So north of this VOR, you would have 1,000-foot obstacle clearance at 4,000 feet. So what that tells you is you can if you were in an emergency, if you had to, you could afford to get down to about 3,000 feet before you really had to start worrying about hitting anything. Although you would have to start worrying about hitting things at 3,000 feet. And this is the interesting part. So south of the Salzburg VOR, your minimum safe altitude is 11,000 feet. Okay, so that's above reasonable altitudes for things like the Cessna 172, certainly a Piper Warrior. Even, I mean, I think we've been to 10.5 in the Cherokee, but it's not an altitude. In an airplane like most single engine pistons, your service ceiling is going to be about 14,500 feet. And this is getting way up there, but this is also mountainous terrain down here, so you do have 2,000 feet of obstacle clearance. Too hot to fly, 35 yeah, Mike, it's boiling hot in Europe. I noticed that. But so if you're south of this VOR and you get in trouble anywhere down here, you're in trouble. I mean, you've really got a situation on your hands. Now, you can see it's got this number 2 icon in the MSA section, and so we'll look around on the chart and figure out what that is. You can see the number 2 over here, and it says applicable over Austrian terrain or territory only. Now, if we look on the overhead view of the chart, you can see here it says Austria on this side, Germany on this side of this light gray dashed line, right? So even where this says, minimum safe altitude of 11,000 feet, it doesn't even extend down here or over here at all. It is a technicality. It's a legal distinction because obviously Austria's aviation authority cannot set minimum safe altitudes in German territory, and vice versa. So I would assume that MSA to still be safe over Germany, but legally speaking, it's not, which is just another kind of interesting little tidbit on this approach. Now, here's where we get to some really interesting stuff. Missed approach. Climb straight ahead to D2.0 OES. Now, the OES is the localizer, 1099, and you can see it up here, and you can see it down here. So that's the localizer. So if you go missed on the approach, you climb straight ahead for 2 nautical miles until your DME gives you a reading of 2.0. Then you start a left climbing turn via the SI locator to the VOR to 6,000 and hold. So what this is saying is you would go missed, you'd climb to D2.0, and it's actually a waypoint as well. It's a GPS waypoint as well if you have GPS. But you would climb to that distance, the D2.0 distance, and then start a climbing left turn around to the SI locator. Now, what the SI locator is, that's a locator outer marker. And a locator outer marker, let me see. I forgot how far out it typically is. So a locator outer marker is a it's an outer marker and an NDB co-located. So this is what you've got your three ILS indicators on your panel. We'll look at those when we get into the airplane. And this guy you want to look out for on your next flight would be ILS 14 LSZB. LSZB, I will write that down. ILS 14. So that's Burn, is it not? I have that scenery. I actually promoted that scenery. It's a great scenery. So the locator outer marker is one of the ways to identify a point on the approach inbound, but it's an NDB. It's a non-directional beacon that we use our automatic direction finder, our ADF, in the cockpit to find. So you would make that turn around until you centered the ADF needle to the SI outer marker, the locator. And then once you cross that, you would start an outbound leg on a heading of 333. So this is rather approximate because you're not going straight to the VOR. You're not going straight from this locator to the VOR. You've got to go outbound. It looks like, what's this, 1.6 to about 10 points. So it's about almost 9 miles outbound on the 333 heading. And then you intercept this 175 degree radial inbound to the VOR. And then once we get to that, you've got a non-standard holding pattern, which is left-hand turns. So instead of, I would fly a teardrop here as well. As if you've seen any of my classes or seen any of my videos, I don't like parallel entries. The airspace right here in this racetrack, we call it, and it actually goes left-hand turns. The area within this racetrack is protected airspace. There's basically two ways to fly this hold entry. You could either fly outbound, what would it be, 355? Yeah, 355, it's right there. You'd either fly outbound 355 and then make a right hand, about a 240 degree turn inbound to intercept the inbound 175 to start your left hand holding pattern, which again, there's two reasons why I don't like doing that. Number one, you are slightly on the outside of the protected airspace. Theoretically, you're still safe, but I don't like theoretically in airplanes when it comes to obstacle clearance. But the other thing is it's a left-hand turn holding pattern, and your initial turn in the hold, if you fly a parallel entry, is a right-hand turn. So that's opposite the direction of the hold, which I don't like either. And we may not do a full class on holding patterns, but I suppose I should probably at some point at least do a really good breakdown of them, because I don't know if I'm making them easy enough to understand. I try to make holds as easy as possible. If you can just visualize what you need, it's pretty easy. But the way I would fly this this hold entry instead of the parallel, what I would do is when I cross this VOR, I would turn out. I would make a right hand turn, and because because these are left hand turn racetrack holding pattern, you would go outbound plus 30. So 355 plus 30 degrees is 025 degrees. So I would cross this VOR, turn right to a heading of 025 degrees for 60 seconds. And then I would make a standard rate left-hand turn around inbound to the 175 inbound and just start my hold. So when it's left-hand pattern, when it's left-hand turns, that's non-standard. So for a teardrop entry like I'm describing, you would go the outbound heading plus 30. 355 plus 30 is 25. If it was on the other side and they were your standard rate, right hand turns, I'm sorry, going in this pattern, you would go outbound plus or outbound minus 30, which would be 355 minus 30, which would be 325, and then you'd make your right hand turn around and start your holding pattern. So that's how I would do that. And you would think, okay, well, that's, relatively complicated to begin with, as they say on TV, but wait, there's more. So let's see. Accelerate not before turn is completed and not below 2,500 feet. And airspeed is going to come into play here, which is unusual. Observe the resulting speed limits and the minimum bank angle. So when you start the missed approach and you go outbound, you fly straight ahead the 2 nautical miles. When you start the turn, there is a missed approach turn section up here, and your aircraft category, maximum speeds, and minimum bank angles. Now, why is that? Because the faster you go, the more ground you cover in your turn. And you can see there is there, as they say, there are rocks in them. There are clouds. There are mountains over here that you can hit. If you're going 180 knots in the turn, and which of course is relatively fast, but if you're going 180 knots in the turn and you make a lazy 10-degree bank in this turn, you're going to be covering a lot of territory, and you could hit these mountains. So, normally what we would say for the categories, you would say, okay, category A is an aircraft that flies a final approach speed of less than 90 knots. On a climb in a missed approach, you're probably going to be going faster than that, and so they've given you a max altitude or max airspeed rather for a category A airplane, which is your Cherokees, your 172s, the 152 will be flying today. Hey JGG pilot, what's going on, Jose? How are you? This one's a fun one, dude. This is a wild approach. And for everybody who's watching, go check out JGG Pilot's YouTube channel as well. He's doing some great stuff over there. So for your category A aircraft, which is what we're going to be flying today, you want a max speed in the turn of 120 knots and a minimum bank angle of 20 degrees. So that you can make sure you don't hit this terrain over here, and you make sure you don't hit whatever this is here, this little this tower, presumably radio tower here. Now, obviously, the faster you get going, the steeper a turn, the steeper a bank you're going to have to make to avoid the terrain. So the bank angle, the minimum bank angle required, increases as you go faster. 165 knots, you need 25 degrees of bank. So that's something that's a little bit different than your average missed approach too. And it's all because of this terrain over here. And so there's another note right here that we'll get to in a second. I'm going to hold off on that. But if we come now down to the plan view, now the basic outline of the approach, holding, how do I know when I'm a beam the VOR to start timing? Michael, so I'll go through that. Well, actually, no, we can go through that right now. So you don't need to be a beam. So if you're talking about starting your timing for the outbound leg, you're not talking about when you are a beam the VOR. What you want is you want to start you start your timer when your wings are level on a heading of 355 degrees, wherever that may be. So you're coming into the VOR here on a heading of 175 or a course of 175. You cross the VOR and start a standard rate turn to the left, and you continue that standard rate turn around until you're on a heading of 355 degrees. And once you level the wings at 355 degrees, that's when you start your timing for the outbound leg. Marcel, how are you? You're at the airport on Tuesday. That's hysterical. Yeah, we're definitely going to fly this approach in a little bit. So it's not, you don't have to be perfectly a beam, but you will be approximately a beam. And then you time the outbound leg and then make the turn in to the inbound leg. So hopefully that answers your question. So the to from flag, the role that plays is you're inbound on the 175 course to the VOR, right? And when the to from flag flips from to from, that's when you know you've crossed the VOR, and that's when you begin that standard rate turn. And that turn stops when you level the wings at 355 outbound, and that's when you start your timing, if that answers your question. And that's an excellent question, by the way, and something that a lot of people have trouble with. So if we come down here, we'll look at the basic outline of the approach. So the basic outline of the approach is the initial approach fix is the Salzburg VOR. So you would be navigating to the Salzburg VOR or cleared to the Salzburg VOR, and you'd fly to that VOR. And once you cross it, then you would come inbound. You would fly outbound rather than 175 degree heading, 175 radial outbound. Remember, radials radiate out, so you would be flying a 175 degree heading with a from flag. Yes, with a from. I had to think about that one for a second. With a from flag off the VOR, so you'd be navigating to the VOR, whatever heading you're on, to get to the VOR, and then once you cross it, you turn to you turn your OBS to 175, and you'd have a from flag, and you'd fly the 175 outbound. Now you would also have the localizer tuned, the 109.9 degree localizer tuned, and once you reach the 2.1 DME, and it says DME required up here, and you'll see why, because all these distances are how we identify where we are in the approach. So once you get to 2.1 from the Salzburg VOR, you also should be 10.9 nautical miles from the OES localizer. Now, you would only know both of those things to be able to be able to identify the fix at Atchit if you're using both of your VORs. If you have two VOR receivers in your airplane, if you're flying it with one VOR, which I'm probably going to fly it with one VOR today, I would fly it outbound on a 175 course out from the VOR, and then once I hit 2.1 off of the VOR, I would have already obviously the 1099 in the backup frequency of my nav radio. Excuse me, and I would just punch the nav radio to switch frequencies, and you should be roughly 10.9 DME from the localizer, because again, it's an ILS DME, localizer DME. And then you would turn left heading 153 and follow the localizer inbound. So this is the side view of this, which also has the altitude. So the VOR, and this is pretty interesting. So the VOR, the altitude, only altitude listed on the overhead view here is 4,000 for the hold. But it also applies, if you look down here to the plan view, it also applies to the initial segment of the approach. So once you cross the VOR at 4,000 feet, you would stay at 4,000 feet, cross Atchit at 4,000 feet, and then this FF15 waypoint, or the D8.1 on the localizer, is your glide slope intercept. And that, or the final approach fix glide slope intercept for the ILS approach, and also for the localizer. Now, the localizer is, we talked about last time, a constant descent final approach, or continuous descent final approach. And that's what it is on this particular approach as well. I'll go into that more in a second here. But you would once you pass D8.1 on the localizer DME, you would then intercept the glide slope on the ILS and descend on the glide slope on the ILS. Now, it is a standard rate 3-degree glide slope. So let's say we're doing it at about 80 knots is about what I would figure for most GA airplanes. So 70 knots is 372 feet per minute descent rate. At 90 knots, it's 478. So you figure about 425 feet per minute, give or take. So that just gives you an idea of what kind of descent rate to expect, and that's a very good one, because it's a standard glide slope, and it doesn't require a steeper descent or a higher rate of descent coming in. Now, the interesting thing is the localizer, because it's a continuous descent final approach. Again, you're not going to be crossing the final approach fix and then doing what we call dive and drive, which would be to drop down to the MDA and follow the MDA along. You would actually descend as best you could along the same glide slope as the ILS, but you'd be doing it using DME. So this is 8.1 DME, and you'd be crossing that at 4,000 feet, like we said. And then if you look over here, it says recommended altitudes, and I don't think they're recommended. I think they're they're pretty strongly inferred if you'd like to successfully execute your localizer approach. So then you would be coming down. So once you hit 7 DME, you would want an altitude of 3640 if you're on the localizer, 6 DME an altitude of 3320, 5 DME 3000, and so on and so forth as you're coming in on the localizer approach. Now, they also have another fix on the localizer approach. You can see here it says localizer 2,700 feet, and that's the D4.0 fix here off of the localizer DME. So you know I'm 4 nautical miles from the DME. You want to be at exactly 2,700 feet. And any of these distances and altitudes that they list on the chart are really good references to make sure that you are where you're supposed to be. Because like 7.0, right, 3640, 6.0, 3320, you might not be accurate to the 20-foot mark, but like at 5 DME, you should be accurate to 3,000 feet. And 4 DME, you want to be on the localizer approach at 2,700 feet. And you want to be pretty militant about this because, again, that's what keeps you out of trouble. So on the ILS approach, you would just continue on down, obviously, with your needles centered. You know, your glide slope and your localizer needles centered. In our case, coming to... they should be pretty rare, Michael. They should be pretty rare. So hopefully they're not too bothersome. So you'd be coming down the glide slope on the ILS approach rather, and for a Category A aircraft, which we are, you would come down to 1,661 feet, which is 250 feet above the airport elevation, and that's when you would see, okay, do I see the airport environment, and let's look at what the airport. Let's look at what you might find. So these are our. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So these are the lights that you're going to see approaching the runway. You've got the high intensity approach light system, and you can see it's got the three, the depiction of the 3 strands of lights coming here out of the end of the runway, and those are the rabbits. Those are the strobing lights that lead into the end of the runway. And a high intensity approach light system gives you, it's pretty bright, and it gives you a really good chance of being able to see that even before you see the airport or the runway, so that you can continue your approach. You also get the REILs, which are the runway end identifier lights. Those are the two white strobing lights at the end of the runway. And then you also have a PAPI, which are the white and red lights on the side of the runway that you use for your glide slope, on the or glide path on a visual approach. The two white, two red is what you're looking for. So there's a whole bunch of lights that you're going to be able to hopefully see before you reach 1,661 feet on the ILS approach. Now, on the localizer approach, the missed approach point on the localizer approach, so it says CDFA, which is the continuous descent final approach. So we would follow these altitudes down, and count them off. DME distance, 7 miles, 6 miles, 5 miles, and count the altitudes down until you reach 1,900 feet, theoretically. But the actual missed approach point is 1.6 DME off the OES localizer, which is the ILS and localizer frequency. So that's the actual missed approach point, is the position, not the altitude. So if you get down, let's say you get down to 9.4 or to 1,900 feet out here, that's still your minimum descent altitude, and you would have to level off at 1,900 feet and then fly until you reach D1.6, and then look and see if you see the required visual elements to be able to approach and land. So hot and cold temperatures, would they affect your approach? Absolutely, on any approach, really. And normally what they would, if there were regularly extreme temperatures that would have an effect on an approach, they would put a note up here in the briefing strip, something about usually for a type of a system called an uncompensated barrel VNAV, which is a pretty rare piece of equipment. But they would have a limit as to, like, you would have to increase your minimums. Say the ILS is 1661, and if the temperatures regularly got really cold, like really bizarrely cold, they might raise those minimums to like 1750 or whatever. But there would be a note on the chart if that were the case. And if it were particularly hot, could that affect your altitudes on an approach? Sure, absolutely could. But there's no note on this chart, so my assumption is that's not an issue with this approach, but it can be. But you would find a note about that on the chart if that were the case. So one might almost think we were done, but we're not. So there's another note on the chart, and again, the lighting. So we talked about this last time. So the runway visual range is a measuring unit where it has two units, and one broadcasts a laser or shoots a laser to the other, and they measure how far it can read the laser through the whatever the ground obscuration is, like the fog or the low level clouds or whatever, and it gives you a distance of how far you can see on the runway. And in this particular case, it's only 550 meters, which is pretty low minimums for a visual approach, or for an ILS approach rather. Pretty low visibility minimums. For us, even if they gave us a runway, because runway visual range is something you would typically get from the tower, or you would get it in you would typically get that from the tower. And if they told you, and you're a private, Part 90, what we call Part 91, or a GA, General Aviation aircraft, like a Cherokee, we're coming in, and they tell us runway visual range is 500 meters, I can still start that approach as a general aviation aircraft, whereas a commercial operation, a Part 135, which is a charter aircraft, or a Part 121, which is a airline operation, scheduled operation, they cannot. So if you got a runway visual range reading from tower of 500 meters, I could still start the approach and see whether I can see the runway at 1,661 feet or not. But that's perhaps another question for another day. But again, one of the nice things about the Jeppesen charts is if so this is with the full let's say if we see the runway at D1.7 1900, no, you would have to go yes, if you're at D1.7, yes, absolutely, yes. So you could only, if you were at D1 point, wait, what was the it's D1.6 is the missed approach point. So if you were at D1.5, technically, no, you can't. D1.7, D1.6, yes, you can. But another thing that we like when about the Jeppesen charts, and again, thank you to Navigraph for this, because they are the best charts in flight simulation, or not in flight simulation. But so this is with the full, this is the visibility requirement with all of the lights working. Now, if the touchdown zone, that's the TDZ, or the centerline lightings are out, that it changes what your minimums are. Now, interestingly, it actually doesn't change the RVR value for the minimums. It's still the same, but it does give us this note right here, this number 1. So let's go see if we can find the number 1 on the chart. So here, if some of the runway lighting were out of service, the touchdown zone or the centerline light, the touchdown zone or the lights embedded in the runway in the touchdown zone of the runway, or the light going down the center line, the string of lights going down the center line, if they are out, then there is a different approach. There's a different climb gradient required for the missed approach. But we're gonna hope that we get all of our lights here. And what do I mean? What do I mean by different climb gradient? So a climb gradient is, and I had to write this down to make sure I didn't goof it up. A climb gradient is the feet climbed per nautical mile traveled. In other words, how many feet you climb up per nautical mile forward that you travel. And because if the centerline lighting is out, the touchdown zone lighting is out, you may have a more difficult time finding the runway. They're warning you that you might have to have a steeper climb gradient on the missed approach. And you can see, so for the ILS, it's 5.0% climb gradient. That's so for every 6,000 feet, say for a mile, for every 6,000 feet forward, you would need to be able to climb 5% of that up, which is roughly about I did the math earlier. It's about 400 feet a minute at 90 knots. So it's not really something you'd have to worry about in a Cherokee or something. But if you were in an A320 or a 737, you would have to worry about that. Oh, nice, from Vienna. No, is LOWW. Welcome aboard. And so I think so right here under the ILS, it says missed approach climb gradient minimum of 5%. So you need to make sure that you can hit the minimum climb gradient depending on what your airspeed is. So it's like I said, it's pretty manageable for what we're doing. It's 420 feet per minute or something along those lines. And basically the principle is that the faster you're going, the steeper you have to climb to maintain that minimum climb gradient. Now, the localizer approach, the minimum climb gradient is lower. It's only 4%. Why would that be, right? You'd figure it might be it might be higher for a localizer approach, but the reason is the minimums on the localizer approach are almost 500 feet above the ground at the airport. The minimums for the ILS are only 250 feet. So you've got a little bit of a head start on your altitude with the localizer approach because you're not descending as low. Circle to land minimums, don't do that here. What are the circle to land minimums? I want to see what the circle to land minimums are here. Refer to chart 1910. Where is chart 1910? Ooh. Let's take a look at this. This is a bad idea, by the way. Circling minimums. I'm sorry. This is the number. You're right. There's two number one. I'm sorry. You're right about that. I'll get back to that in a second. This is the circling approach for runway 33. And wisely, they give you a pretty high circle to land MDA, minimum descent altitude, of almost 1,100 feet. So what this means is, basically, if you wanted to, let's say the winds were favoring runway 33, but there's no approach to runway 33 for obvious reasons. I don't think there are RNP approaches. Like this is an RNP approach to 33, but you're gonna see how. I mean, you obviously can't fly this in a Cessna 152 or a Cherokee because you're coming through the mountains and flying these little curves here. So you can't do that in a Cherokee. So what would you do if the wind was, favoring runway 33? You would fly the ILS approach or the localizer approach to runway 15, and then before or above 1,100 feet, you would then break off. You would fly a heading of 125. See, heading of 125 for 3.5 nautical miles, which you would measure from the local. No, you would measure from the locator outer marker, the NDB, and then no, it would have to be from the ILS because it's the only way you could get DME. But it's a visual maneuver, 125-degree outbound, 3.5 nautical miles, right-hand turn inbound to land on 33. And again, I'm sort of surprised they have a circling approach to 33 here, but remember also that the rule is, let's say you come in, let's say you're flying the ILS to 15 and you're flying a circle to land 33, and that's what the clearance would be from the tower. They would say, Cessna 152 Mike Romeo cleared ILS 15, circle to land 33. So you'd fly the ILS 15 and then you'd break it off and fly the circle to land 33. You could do it if you're above, if above 1,100 feet, or 2,500 feet on your altimeter is 1,100 feet above the ground. 2,500 feet on your altimeter, 2,510. Then you could fly the circle to land if you have the airport in sight visually at an altitude above 2,510 feet. Once again, remember, if you this is a great note too right here. If you at any point while you're flying this part of the circle to land for the runway, if at any point during that circling procedure you lose track of the runway, you lose visual contact with the runway, you have to go missed immediately. Don't goof around on that one. Now it's got a missed approach. If visual reference is lost, climb to the MDA or higher and follow a circling track to runway 33, proceed to the localizer, and then direct on the missed approach, which we just went over on the ILS chart. But this is a great note right here. I hope you can see this. So it says, do not overshoot. That's good advice right there. So I would have, well, is that a back course localizer? That's a good question. That's an interesting question. What I was just wondering is, so they give you the really solid advice of not overshooting the turn for the runway, because if you overshoot the turn, you could hit this mountain right here. But how do you know if you've overshot? But you have to be visual anyway. So be careful. That's a really good one. And let's go back to the ILS chart. And I did goof that up. So this note here is for if the RVR of 750, when a flight director or autopilot or HUD or to the decision altitude is not used. So if the touchdown zone lighting or the centerline lighting is out, is not functioning, you can still use the regular visibility, the regular RVR range, runway visual range measurements, unless if you are using a flight director or an autopilot or a heads-up display. If you're not, you have to increase those visibilities to 750 RVR, which makes a whole lot more sense. I couldn't figure out why the visibility wasn't increasing when your lights were decreasing, because that's normally the way it works. And if the approach light system is out entirely, then your RVR runway visual range is 1,300 meters, which is I think about a half a mile of visibility you would need. So that's that. I mean, there's a lot going on with this chart, and this is not an approach you would brief on the descent into the airport. You would definitely want to get a good a good idea about that one before you flew it. Okay, so so now this other note becomes a little bit more clear. So here it says for minimums based on a missed approach climb gradient of less than 5% on the ILS or 4% on the localizer, C11A. Now, what does this mean? So this is for faster aircraft, right? So if you're flying let me zoom this out. I'm sorry for constantly zooming this in and out. I know it's probably annoying. The missed approach climb gradient minimum is 5% on the ILS approach. So for minimums based on a missed approach climb gradient of less than 5% on the ILS, then you would see this other chart, 11A. Now, if we look over to 11A, we can see, let's take a look at category B, because that's more likely to be affected. So 1673 are your minimums for a category B aircraft. If you can't make the 5% climb gradient on the missed approach, your minimums would go from 1673 to let's see, they would still give you 1673 if you could make 4%. If you can only make 2%, they're going to give you 1968. So you're losing about 300 feet there almost. And the reason is, if let's say you have an airplane with a really poor climb capability, or this also might apply to like a twin engine airplane with one engine out, right? So if you're flying a twin and you lose an engine, and well, you probably won't be able to climb on one engine anyway in a twin. But if for whatever reason the only thing you can do is 2.5% climb radius or climb gradient on the missed, your minimums for the ILS go up significantly, again, because they don't want you to get closer to the ground if you're not able to climb well, because it just makes it more difficult to try and outclimb terrain. So it's that simple, guys. It's that easy, you know. So basically, you fly inbound to the VOR, outbound 175, intercept the glide slope and localizer or intercept the localizer rather. Fly along here level at 4,000 feet until you reach D8.1 on the ILS DME, and then start your descent on the 3-degree glide path down to the runway. I did mention earlier, I wish there were, oftentimes they'll have timings down here, and what it will say is um, the amount of time it takes you from the final approach fix to the missed approach point, which is D1.6 right here. If you're traveling at 70 knots ground speed, 90 knots ground speed, 100 knots ground speed, etc. And the reason why I like that is because if they give you that information, you can start a timer. Even if you're flying the ILS approach, you can start a timer once you hit the final approach fix and start your descent down the glide path or glide slope on the ILS. You hit your timer anyway, and if for whatever reason you lose the glide slope on the way in to the approach, on the approach, then you can switch to localizer minimums and just count your time or mark your time to the missed approach point. But you can't do that here. You actually could, if you lost the glide slope. That's probably why they don't give it, because it is a continuous descent final approach, so it's a continuous descent down. So if you lost the glide slope, the ILS glide slope, you could still continue flying the localizer approach until you reach 1900 feet or D1.6 to go missed. So that's all being said. And yes, there is a lot on this chart. There is a lot to think about. There's a lot to consider. And like I said, you wouldn't want to read this chart in the descent towards the VOR to start the approach. You really have to brief this one ahead of time and know what restrictions there are for your category of aircraft. Oh no, 1 to 2 second pauses. That's not what we like to see. Hopefully it's okay. Let me know if anybody else is having issues. That is a bummer. Well, hopefully that rectifies itself. Oh, guys, I'm very, very sorry about that. Let me know if it clears up. Did that just start? Hopefully it gets better here. Let me see if I can do something to fix this. I don't know if I can, but let me look here. It seems okay on my end, but just looking real quick on my system, everything looks like it's pretty good. Let's go here. Okay, hopefully this will help. Where is this? Oh, this is definitely connected. Okay, so hopefully that clears it up. So let me know if that gets better. That's a bummer. What's going on here? Everything looks okay. So I guess I'm just gonna have to live with it. So sorry about that. Technology being what it is. Okay, it's getting better. Okay, good. So I guess what we'll do now is we will give ourselves have a go at flying the approach. So I'm going to launch my good friend Microsoft Flight Simulator here, and we'll see if we can't fly this thing. So, just launching the sim now. So let's see. Smooth now, like the landing will be. You have more faith in my flying ability than I do. So let's see here. Yeah, okay, so it looks all right. So, launching Microsoft Flight Simulator. Let's see here. Please tell me that you're going to capture. Oh, it's still launching. So, like I said, it's a. It looks like a complicated chart. It is a complicated chart. So what? Let me ask you another question. So, what is the minimum amount of equipment in the airplane that we have to use or have to be able to fly this? So, oh, we got. I just switched this over to that. So, basically, what you need in the airplane to be able to fly this would be one one ILS receiver or localizer receiver, VOR receiver. To be able to fly to the VOR, you would need at least a localizer receiver to be able to fly the localizer portion of the approach. Now for the what do they refer to it as, the SI locator, the locator outer marker, which is this D1.6 and the circular thing they show right here. You could technically identify that by GPS. You wouldn't necessarily have to have a localizer. It's exactly, it's halfway around the world from New York. So you could obviously do this with an ADF, but you don't need it. So that's that. So now let's get into the I'm glad that got better. I don't know why it dropped, but so me good friend Microsoft Flight Simulator is taking forever to, okay, it's just starting to load now. Yeah, exactly. Does YouTube have auto FPS? So what we shall do is we'll take off runway 15 and we'll hang a Louis and we'll come out this way, and then we'll make the right hand turn, intercept the cross the VOR southbound, continue. That's really too bad. You know, that's the thing about streaming, is you never know why it has perhaps chosen now to not stream very quickly. So now we just have to wait for Microsoft Flight Simulator to load. And take a look at this here. So that's what we got. And so like I said, there's a lot going on with this yeah, there is quite a few dropped frames here. It could be, oh yeah, full of can. It's definitely one of those approaches where going 140 knots would make life significantly different. That's for sure. Let's see here. Oh, you know what happened? What happened is uh oh, I see. Let me turn that off and see if that helps. So what happened is that I was messing around with I mess around with things all the time, which is part of the problem. And it changed my streaming settings on me for no apparent reason. And that's probably why. I'm going to be on USA East, I do believe. So anybody wants to go flying, let's see here. So anybody who wants to give it a go, you're perfectly welcome to try.
FS Realistic connected.
All right. Don't tell me it's now. This is miles behind where I am. Okay, for some reason, it looks like it. For some reason, it looks like the stream dropped like way back from where we were. So, jeez, yikes. Okay, well, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna continue. So I'll just continue. It looks on my iPad like it jumped backwards, but I'm just gonna continue with the flight, and it'll just be where it is. So here we are. I gotta get out of my Air Jamaica A321 here. Let's get in the old WB Sim 152. Did I change the there we go. We gotta go 152 Mike Romeo because this is important. This is important. I need to get my streaming settings fixed again because all right, so there's this Cessna 152 that we have selected. All right, let's go back here. All right, and then the airport is LOWS. Go LOWS. Ran into an issue with the equipment on the default 172. That's interesting. All right. So yeah, we'll just have to like, we'll just have to sort of deal with what we deal with here. So we'll go to runway. What is the live weather? What is the live weather? Take a look here. 040 at 6. Okay, I can deal with that. 040 at 6. And let's go back to about 12:43. All right, so I will actually take runway 33 because that way we can just climb straight out. So let me load up my honeycomb here. And let's start. And let me start this. Okay. So now let's see. Now let's see what we got here. Yeah, something went goofy. Let me see. All right. So let me see. Okay. I'm not even sure that this is loading anything here. All right, we'll see what we get here. So 12 knots and 270. Okay. So it doesn't seem like the sim even wants to load. So I don't know if maybe I'm having an internet issue or what the deal is. This is frustrating. It doesn't look like it's even doing anything here. Let's try this one more time. Just going to switch menus here and see if it will load. So waiting for, oh, now it's caught up here. Yeah, there's definitely something goofy going on with my internet, but we'll have to live with that. Alright, so hopefully this loads, and then we can get our flying underway here. Alright. I had forgotten that I was doing something with my OBS settings the other day, and I think it goofed it up. So that's probably why the stream is goofy, but hopefully. Oh yeah, I need to turn everything on because we're loading into the runway, if we load in ever. So I guess while we wait for that to load in. No reason to sit there and stare at that. So again, I'm going to load into runway 33 and we'll depart out to the north. And I'll make a left-hand turn. We'll come out here and over German territory. And then we'll make, once we get roughly a beam to VOR, we'll make a right-hand turn inbound. And then we'll start down. And so I've got to tune the localizer. We finally have action here. Alright. Ready to fly.
State restored.
Okay, now. State restored makes me nervous because that might mean that I'm low on fuel. So let's do something about that, because we will all recall that I ran out of fuel one time. Alright, cool. Roger that, Mike, thanks. So I'm gonna go, I'll go 8 gallons left side. And come on. Alright, so there's that. Now, we have the DME, or the VOR, the ADF rather. Alright, so now let's check our instruments here. I remember. Alright, so what we need is the, I think it was, what was it? 410. So, look at that. Alright, 410, so we've got that. Let's go here to pin boards. And we'll come over here. No, come on. So there's that. Now, the localizer frequency is 1099. Alright, there we go. Localizer frequency is 1099, so we'll put that in. We want that as the backup. What we want is the main frequency is the 113.8. The 113.8. Alright, so there we have it. So, so that's going to be roughly what we're looking at here. And get rid of that. No, I don't want to get rid of that. That's the chart. Alright, let's bring this down just a little bit. Okay, so here we are. Hit escape, zoom out the world, and hit. Okay. They turn up the AC. Alright, so there is. Let's see here. Alright, mixture is rich. Let's release the parking brake. No flaps needed. Trim is good. Alright, so remember, we're taking off in the opposite direction we're going to land here. We at least want to do that well. Alright, airspeed's alive, 65 knots. Alright. And this is at one of the Asobo handcrafted airports. It should be pretty good. So. Get a look at this terrain. Yeah, see, there's some. Yeah, there's some terrain. So we'll fly this in VMC. And there's some like light flickering behind the I'm gonna make my left turn here. We'll climb up to 4,000 feet. And hold about 80 knots in the climb. And yeah, you can definitely see the rocks here. Yeah, I was gonna say that can't be right. All right, 2,500 climbing 4,000. I forgot it's late in the evening. Probably is still some light. So basically what I want to know is, see, 113.8, 113.8, 3,000. What I'm going to do is so I'm setting this to 090. I wonder what all these lights are about. Setting this to 090 from the VOR. So once we cross the 270 degree radial over here, we should get a centered needle and we can take a right turn. Oh yeah, that's FS realistic. That absolutely is FS realistic. So 3,300 climbing 4,000. I just wish I knew what all the lights were about. Kind of the blinking lights and the oh boy, look at this. Alright, so we'll put this on squawk altitude here. 3,500 climbing 4,000. See what gives us a let's see here. Yeah, it's basically right north of us now. So we'll just keep going. Wonder if we'll get into the clouds. We might get into it a little bit. So this is live weather, which is kind of cool. So what I want is somewhere around there. Alright, there's 4,000 feet. Let's not descend too much, right? Heading of about 300 will do us just fine. Get ourselves trimmed out here. Alright, so lean in the mixture. Just a little bit there. Alright. 7.5 miles from the DME, or from the VOR rather. Just keep going, let's see. On the right side of the runway is the Red Bull. Oh, no way, the Red Bull Museum. That's awesome. Golden hour in Austria. Perfect time to fly this. Awesome. Alright, so. I mean, I could theoretically, actually, we want to make good use of all of the equipment in our aircraft. Let me tune this to 1099. No. And then that is, so I got the ILS down here. I'd actually rather have it the other way around. 113.8. I'd rather have the VOR down here and the ILS up there. So the VOR, so this is the VOR. Make sure we are at the altitude we want to be at here. No. Alright, so it is 153. Now remember, it doesn't matter what heading you put in the OBS when you're flying an ILS or a localizer, because it only gives one heading. But it's just good for reference. And remember, you have 300 feet with no. Actually, the DME is off of the DME the DME I want is off the Salzburg VOR, so I want 113.8 right now. See, what I was trying to do, alright, fine, be that way. What I was trying to do was get the ILS up here and the VOR down here, but the DME is off of the number 1 nav. So I can't. So what I will do is put the VOR, or the ILS on the bottom. Let's see, there's nothing out here to hit, I hope. We don't have to hope. Our minimum safe altitude is 4,000 feet. Alright, so let's see, this should be 153. I have to remember to fly, and then the NDB, the locator is right behind us right here. So this I want to be on 090, and when this needle centers, that means we're on the 270 radial out here, and I can make a right-hand turn to 090 and fly into the VOR. You could actually, you know what, Mike, that's a much better idea. You know what? Thank you for asking that. That is a much better idea. Let me do that instead. Let's see here. Alright, then we'll fly the hold. Perfect. Alright, I don't know why I didn't think of that. Not too bright. Alright, let's see, about 060 we'll figure. That was a much better idea, Michael. So we'll fly the hold. Whoops, don't want to descend, don't want to descend. So we'll fly the hold. And then, I don't know why I didn't think of that. So we'll cross the hold outbound plus 30, so 025. That was a complete brain fart right there. So we'll cross the VOR, 025 outbound. Make a left-hand turn to 0. See this? The plane Microsoft Flight Simulator tends to do this. Like, the plane just wants to descend and descend and descend, and then at some point it wants to climb and climb and climb. So, turn. How close are we? 2.7. Probably better if I just fix my head position here instead of... Alright, we're 2.2 nautical miles from the station, so I still don't want to let that needle get too far off. So I'm going to come back another 5 degrees. So once we cross the station, that's when this to flag flips to from. We're going to go turn, time, twist, throttle, talk. So we're going to turn to a heading of 025. And then we'll start our timer. Then we're going to twist the OBS around to 175 inbound. Check our throttle. We shouldn't need to make any power adjustment. All right, we're at 0.8 from the VOR, so that the needle's going to start going kooky anyway. And once it flips, this is pretty cool. There it goes. So now we're going to go turn. And then once we're established, 025. There's 025. So we'll call it about 5.5 right there. About the 55-second mark. Turn, time, twist. And we got to twist this. No. To 175. Alright, and now we're just got another 30 seconds. Such a much better idea. Michael, thank you very much for that suggestion. I don't know why I didn't think of that. That is the obvious way to do it. Alright, 10 more seconds. It's a left-hand turn. Alright, now we'll make our standard rate left-hand turn, and remember that means you get our little airplane right here on the left hash mark. Drop the nose. Let the nose drop here. I don't want to be climbing. And just want to get back down to 4,000 feet. And I'm just keeping an eye on that needle. And if the 185 hits this hash mark and the needle's not moving, then I'm just going to hold right there for a second. And that looks like it's what's going to happen. I'm going to hold it right here. Because the needle is not coming in. There we go. You always start to get nervous when the needle's not coming in. It's easy to get nervous. Alright, so I'm not going to do another turn in the hold, because there's really no need. We get 175 inbound. I want to see if I get pushed any direction by the wind here. Might be a wind out of the west. hold at 180. Come on, stop climbing, please. Alright. And again, that needle can go a little flunky there while we're... Alright, those are both flipped. I'm gonna flip... You know what? I am gonna flip these because... 175. Because now I want the, now I want the DME off the... Whoopsie. One thing you never want to hear your pilot say, whoopsie. I want the DME, this 12.0 here, I want that off of the ILS frequency now. So at 10.9, those needles should roughly center. That localizer needle anyway. So we got 175 with a from, which is what we want. And look at this, right at 10.9, that needle is going to center. And then we're going to turn left to a heading of 153. I should have turned out a little earlier. That's just for reference, the 153. So there is the runway, you can see it, but now let's see what the, at least I think that's the runway. So now we want to stay on here until D8.1, and that's where we start our descent. I'm going to try a heading of about 155 and see how that does. Yeah, the weather's amazing. Come back a little. So first thing I want to do is add carb heat. Let's try 160. I think the wind is out of the west. Alright, 160, and we have to wait until D8.1 to start descending. But I do want to start slowing down, so I'm going to pull the power to about 2,000. And then right here, about a half a mile short of the final approach fix, add the first notch of flaps. Heading a 160. Tune this. Flip that around for later use here. All right, now can start our descent. Glide slope is captured. Alright, about, like we said, about 425 feet a minute, but we don't know what our ground speed is. But I do know that we have to get, alright, D7.1. I do know that we have to get right a little bit, so about 165. Let's try 165. Now we're getting pushed west for the wind. Alright, 165 is bringing that needle back in. We're still a little bit high. Let me try like about 162 maybe. Right about here. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to find a heading right here that will hold that needle centered there. Alright. 3,300 for 1660. I like this airspeed. I like this this flap and power setting. I'm gonna keep it right here. This is an easy airplane to slow down, and 140 at 4. It's an easy airplane to slow down and land, so. And if anything, if my descent rate starts to get steeper, like 600 feet, instead of adding power, I'm going to pull the nose up a little bit, because that gets rid of a little bit of energy, which is what I'd like to do. So 3,000. At 5 miles, and we were about there. So 2,700 at 4 miles is what we want. Whoops, come back to the right. Come on. I'm not looking out the window. I'm stuck. I'm right on the needles here. 4 miles, 2,700 feet. We're a little bit low. I'll keep that 162, give or take. So 3 miles. Even though these are for the localizer, they're giving me distances and altitude, so I'm going to use them. So at what, 3 miles, we want 2370. And we are going to do the missed approach. Alright, 2,300 for 1660. And you should expect a wind change under 1,000 feet, and I think that's exactly what we've gotten. The nose down just a little bit more. Alright, now I will reduce some power. Alright, 2,000 for 1660. If you get a full deflection of the needles, you have to go missed. Remember, we're not on the Pappies, even though they're too white, too red. Whoops. I don't know why that happened. Alright, 18 for 1660. And this is how close you are to the ground when you get to the minimums on an ILS approach. 17, 1660. There we go, missed approach. Alright. Power. And we climb straight ahead to 2 DME. Oh, please don't not show me the whole missed approach point, procedure right now, please. That would be disappointing. Why is it not showing me the whole approach? Please, can you just show me what I need to see? Thank you. Alright, so I'm just going to fly runway heading to 2 DME. Then a left turn. Oh, no, it's actually, so... Oh yes, why is it not showing me okay, there we go. I was gonna say, so the needle flipped or not the needle flip, but it died on me. And then it came around to, and it came alive again at 2. Alright, so remember, gotta stay in 20-degree bank turn. And that's right there. And I gotta come around and go to the, gotta come around and go to the outer marker, the SI locator. So whenever this centers, then we fly that heading. Alright, so we'll keep climbing. Once we get to this locator, then we'll turn right to a heading of 33. Well, we're already basically already on a heading of 333. We'll turn right to a heading of 333 because that's the reciprocal of 153. Boy, it is beautiful here. Holy cow! Hey, Paolo, what's going on? So it looks like it's a little bit off to our left, so we'll come back here a little bit to the left. But what I'm doing is just trying to keep this needle straight up and down here. So 3,500 climbing 4,000. There we go. Oh yeah, flaps up, baby. 37 for 4. Boy, is it beautiful out here. Now I'm just gonna let the needle, look at this. Now I'm just gonna let the needle turn because it's I need it to basically reverse. Show that I've crossed. And it is starting to move. There's 4,000. So I'll pull some power out. Turn our carb heat off. Probably a decent idea. Although really carb heat on is not a bad idea either in this weather. Alright. We'll wait for this needle to flip, and I'm going to turn right to 330 until this reads 10.9. Alright. Give or take. And see, we can fly the localizer outbound in reverse. That's the other cool thing. I'm gonna hold it right here. So the wind is coming from the west. It's blowing us toward the localizer. Alright, 4,000 feet. Perfect. Not too bad. The ILS and the VOR track is a backcourse. You can, yes. That's not officially the way to do it, but you can, yes. But the other trick to it is that this needle is reverse sensing because you're going in the opposite direction. So the needle's off to my right. I actually have to come back to my left to get over that needle. See that? I'm heading a 325. Let's go over to 320, and it's going to bring that needle back in. The mental gymnastics of IFR flight. All right, let's make this even more fun here. All right. There we go. Now we made it even more fun. So, needle is in. We'll come back to the right here a little bit. Back up to that 3,000 feet. Or 4,000 feet rather. So, at 10.9. At 10.9 over here, we'll make a turn to the right, heading of 355. Oops, you gotta come back a little bit. All right. $7.5. And it's funny because you even just having the outside reference is helpful. Even if you're not looking outside, it certainly is helpful. When you go full IMC, it's a different ball game. All right, looking for 10.9. Airplane wants to lean. And I don't need DME for this because I'll know when I hit that VOR because this flag is going to flip. Come back a little bit to the right here. 9.4 for 10.9, so we've got another mile and a half to go here. It's going to be a right turn to 355. So must track to opposite direction to get the needle centered. Yes, because it's reverse sensing. All right, 10.1 for 10.9. I hope the weather gets worse. I want a good, like a legit ILS. And you can see, so this needle for the 175 radial is coming in. So it should center at 10.9 if we're absolutely spot on. That's close enough. Alright, we'll start our turn here. And the reason it's not exactly on is because of wind correction. I'm going to try about 3, 4, 5 here. Actually, no. All the way around. We're going to try 360. So I'm just going to hold this until this needle flips. And then we'll make a right hand turn to 025. Remember, it's outbound plus 30 because it's the left-hand turns. And we're getting closer to that needle flipping because the needle's starting to really deviate. As soon as this flips, come on, baby. There we go. Right hand turn to 025. And we'll start our 1 minute timer. So that's right on 1 minute. Turn, time, twist, throttle, talk. So we gotta flip this around to 175. And I'm expecting a little bit of wind out of the west, so that's actually going to help me in this hold. Man, this is beautiful. Look at this. Not bad, huh? LOC 26. We can do that at some point. Not today, but... What is it? LOC 26. Whoopsie. Where are you going there, airplane? Alright, left hand turn. I'm writing something down here. Alright, now. Let's see. 45 minutes into the flight, my brain is finally starting to work. I'm just going to hold the attitude indicator right there. Remember, I'm looking for this needle to come in. And it didn't come in last time. We had to wait. So when the 175 gets to this hash mark, if it's not coming in, then I'm gonna stop my turn. And it's not going to. So what I'm gonna have to do on my outbound leg, so we'll do one more hold, one more turn in the hold, and on my outbound leg, I'm holding the 175. That's what I want, 175. I'm just holding it on this left 45-degree hash mark until this needle starts coming in. And what I'm gonna have to do on the next turn in the hold is we're gonna have to come 355. We'll go about maybe 345 on the heading in the next turn in the hold, and we'll see if that doesn't fix this, because you see how we're kind of straightened out here. We'll do one more turn in the hold. Whoopsie. I waited too long, obviously. Alright, and we're expecting a west wind, so I'm just going to hold it 175. So now I'm going to flip. I am going to flip the VOR now, because, so that's 13.8, that's now the VOR. The reason I flipped it is because I want the DME. Now let's see, it started at about 10 after, so let's see if we get 60 seconds. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be anything close to 60 seconds, but we'll see. So we should have 60 seconds inbound. Might not be too bad. Nope, it was... Wow. Alright, so... Flip that back. So, I am going to go... I want to go ahead and give about 340 on the outbound leg and see if that helps. I'm also going to descend back to my assigned altitude and see if that helps. Could be I'm just a little bit lazy in the turn too, which might be why we're not getting around. Nope, nope, nope. Alright, 340. See if we can't correct for that wind a little bit. Alright. And we'll try. So it was about what? 20 seconds short. But I've corrected some of the wind correction for the outbound. So let's go until it's back to the 12 hand. And we'll come around. Would you add the time to the outbound, say, so 50 seconds? Yes, exactly that, Michael. Exactly that. So I'm flying 340 instead of 355 because the wind is out of the west, and I'm expecting that's going to help with that wind correction. Another 10 seconds and we'll start our turn. Alright. Keep that ball centered. I always have a tendency to do that when I'm flying. Hurts your neck. So, don't get lazy on the turn. Keep turning. And again, gotta hold that 175 right here in the hash mark. Not as much though, not as bad. Still pretty bad though. That must be a pretty strong wind then. A lot of times the winds at altitude are quite, yeah, I'm on Volanta, yeah. Hopefully my turns look pretty good. Oh, wait. Oh. I was looking at the wrong. I was looking up here for the needle, not down there. Which is foolish. I just totally goofed that up. Let's see if we can't bring that needle back. Alright, maybe we'll do one more turn to hold. I just totally goofed that up. I just totally goofed that up. It just flipped. Alright, let's try this one more time. I was looking at... This is the problem with... This is one of the reasons I don't like using two VORs, is because you've got to remember which one is which. Which, with the amount of brain power that I have, is suspect. Alright, let's make a left turn around to 340. Yeah, I mean, I went way through that needle. And I am high. So I actually may have done that pretty darn well. I was just looking at the wrong VOR indicator. Alright, 340. All right, 340. We'll go outbound until 25. I gotta say 340. Oh man, sitting down for 2 hours can be uncomfortable. Let's see. Can you use nav1 to track the inbound of the VOR and then? Yes, you can. I mean, oh, Peter, there's a good question. Ha! We're doing good. I mean, what I honestly would, I mean, this is the right way to do it, using 2 VORs, but you could, you know, use this one for the 113.8 for the VOR, and then once you cross, go outbound to 2.1 and then flip them, and then see where the, and then you would just see where the ILS indicators are and then just intercept them. So let's see here. So now let's try this again, only this time we're gonna look at this. See, it's already coming in. So we certainly corrected. Not too bad. I want to see what the time on the inbound leg is. All right, roll out in 175. Let's see what the timing is on the inbound here. So once this flips, we're going to continue 175. Come back to about 170. I'm going to see. Yeah, we might actually be pretty good here. Alright, needle's coming back. This needle, that is. Come back to the right here. I'm going to come back to about 180 because I think the needle's going to keep going. Alright, 180. Now let's just see if that stays. Just going to flip so I can see what the... Okay, we're getting close. I'm just going to stay right here at 185. That's so cool. Alright, there we crossed. Now I'm going to go left to 175. And now we should intercept this at 10.9. And hopefully we will have a legitimate approach here. Air-to-air refueling incoming. Oh man. No, we're good on fuel this time. I'm never gonna live that one down. Alright, the localizer needle is coming in on the ILS. I'm gonna put some. Actually, no. Yeah, I'm gonna put. All right, never mind. And that should center at 10.9. That needle should center right at 10.9. That would mean we're spot on. Alright, we're pretty darn close. We'll turn right or left here. My other right. To 153. And remember from the last one, it was about 162 or so to hold it. So we'll fly 160 and see what that does. Remember last time we were about 162 to keep the needle centered, and it's already starting to move. So, and D 8.1 is when we should intercept the glide slope. So about half mile short, so about 8.6 is when I'll start thinking about when I might descend. $160. Hey, Eddie, what's going on? We're, I'll go carb heat there. Bring back some power. Gotta maintain altitude until that 8.1. At least stay above 4,000 until 8.1. Alright, there we go. Notch the flaps. Let's get coming down here. So heading a 160. One notch of flaps. I'm going to try to keep it one dot below the horizon there. Alright. No. Alright. No, please. Don't start. Come back a little bit more to the right. At the park with the grandkids, that's awesome. Those are days you can't replace, you know? The little things in life. So at 6 miles, we want to be at 3320. And we're not going to be at 3320 because we are too high and too far to the right. 6 miles, we're about 60 feet high right now. I want to start diving for it, but I do want to start correcting, particularly because I have a left deviation and a vertical deviation. Alright. 5 miles, I want to be at 3,000 feet rather. And by knowing what altitude you need to be at what distance, you can tell how high you are. So 5 nautical miles, we're about 50 feet high still. Alright, 3,000 for 1661. Alright, we're definitely through the localizer now. So we'll come back 162 right there. Alright, 2,800 for 1660. A little bit of power in now because that's, I don't want to drop through the glide slope. 2,700 for 1660. Coming back to 160. 2,600 for 1660. I'm gonna hold 160 and see what that does. 2,500 for 1660. $24 for 1660. Not looking. I checked briefly outside, but I'm staying on the needles. And when that vertical speed drops to like 300 feet a minute, I know that's not good. So there's 2,200 for 1660. Nope. Staying on the needles. On the needles. Come on. 21 for 1660. Because this is the challenging part of the ILS when you get in close. 2000 for 1660. 165 in the heading. 19 for 1660. A little bit of power out. 18 for 1660. Checking the runway, but not. Oh, no, 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 no. 18 for 1660. I'm clearly visual, but I would have liked to have done a little bit better than that. Alright. Would have liked to do a little bit better than that, honestly. But I mean, if that were the minimums, that would have been a little tight. Alright, we'll lean the mixture for taxi here. If that were the minimums, that would have been a little bit tight, I would say. Now, where are we going to park? That looks more interesting than that. Right? I mean, this looks like the GA side of the airport. But this looks significantly more interesting, so let's go over there. So, hey, Gulf Coast Tim, what's going on? This looks pretty cool. So this is a Sobo stock airport. Alright, so clear the runway. I'll clear things up here. We'll go landing lights off, taxi lights on. So this is an Asobo stock airport, and it's pretty darn good. Unlike my taxiing, on the other hand. What is this over here? This is pretty wild. If this is a cargo terminal, this is the coolest cargo terminal I've ever seen. Oh, I can't even go in there. I'm banned. Oh well. Oh well. Not even allowed in. I just thought this was a cool looking building, so I thought I'd come over here. Let's go take a quick look at the other side. So this was, I'm pretty sure this was my first time flying in Austria. And it won't be my last. Man, what a fun flight that was. So self-appraisal, the thing that I really goofed up was, and I knew I'd do it, is I looked at the wrong needle coming into the inbound leg on the last turn in the hold. So in other words, I just kept going right through because I was looking at this needle, which is over here, which is that was a goof. My actual flying on the ILS wasn't too bad. It was pretty good for the most part. If it had been to minimums, I was getting pretty high on the glide slope. You know, if it had been all the way down to 1,660 feet in the muck, that might have been a little bit of an issue. That's the Red Bull Museum. No way. Do they have Sebastian Vettel's 4 World Championship F1 trophies in there by any chance? Oh, what did you Peter, did you see the Kevin Magnussen thing at the NASCAR race? That was fantastic. If Kevin Magnussen was driving in NASCAR, I would watch NASCAR. Yeah, we'll go over here to the little boys. We'll just come over here. This is probably parking over here, right? That's the Red Bull Museum. That is so cool. Yeah, there we go. There's a good parking spot. Other than that, I mean, I think I did pretty well. I mean, there's a lot going on with this approach. Toes on the brakes. Mixtures to idle cutoff. We'll set the parking brake. Lights coming off. Avionics master off. Mags off. Master and battery switches off. Carb heat in. I mean, all things considered, pretty decent approaches. Could have been a little bit tighter, but airplanes, motorcycles, and an F1 car. That's awesome. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that. I certainly did. And let's see. Oh, Michael, thank you. Great questions, guys. Some really, really good questions on this one. And I will definitely check out the LOWY. As a matter of fact, we can look at it right now real quick. But let's see here. Let's take a look at the LOWY chart. Let me just close out of the sim here real quick. And let's see here. LOWI. And which one did you say it was? 2.6. Because I mean, this was a lot of fun. Localizer. Ooh, yeah. See, so the reason why I didn't do this one for a class is because I'm in a Cessna 150, and the minimum up here is 9,500 feet. It would take us an hour and a half to get there. I actually have flown this approach, but maybe we can fly it in a Bonanza. That'd be kind of cool. And that's a steep descent rate. Yep. See that? So first thing that stands out to me when you look at this, descent angle 3.77 degrees. That's steep. That's steep. Yeah. So interesting one. And that's why there's no category D minimums. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I am going to let you guys go for the day. Hey, Magnum, what's going on? I'm going to definitely check out the Red Bull Museum. But I appreciate everybody coming out. I appreciate everybody's tolerance with the stream. The OBS screwed with my settings. I'll check with that later. But thank you guys so much for coming out. I really appreciate everybody watching and the great feedback and interaction. If you are so inclined to help support the channel, I have a link to my Patreon in the description. There's also a button to join the channel here on YouTube just below the video. So I'd love your support there. But I really appreciate everybody coming out and watching. And hopefully that was worth everybody's time. Approach into Cancun. That's not a bad one either. Hey, you're very welcome for the lesson. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I am going to stand up now because I've been sitting down for 2.5 hours, and go down and have lunch with my lovely wife. So thanks, guys, everybody. I appreciate it. And we'll do this again on Thursday, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, so 1 p.m. New York time. And I would love to see everybody back on Thursday. So take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you in a couple days. Take care.